Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me. I'm back. And when I say I'm back here on Sunday night. But I'm also back because I had to shut down my computer for a few minutes because this old gal needs a little bit of a kickstart every now and then. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being patient. PB in the house. Miranda Couch, she's here. The monkey butt toenail. Apocalypse Surfer in the house. What's going on? Let's see. Derek Reagan Walls. Christy Daniels. From the frying pan into the fire, from California to the other side of the country. I hope all's well out there, Christy. Everything's cool. Longstar 117. I just had to do a little reboot on the old computer. Leanne's in the house. Danica Rose. Nice to see you. There's my girl, Heather. Heather and I are going to be doing a show on Friday. Of course, whenever Heather and I get together, it is always great astrological chemistry. I love working with Heather. I'm just so proud of her and the work she's doing to advance astrology and carve a niche out for herself in this world in a very meaningful way. And it's always great to have her here. Mary Grether in the house. There's Ann Erickson, Joe Dimitri, Christine Muse, Double M, Misty Minor, the lovely and talented Joan S. Heather Gianna up 77. Judy Anderson. There's my man Thor by the door. Let's see. Jennifer Rubin. Jennifer, I hope you can make our outing. I really want to meet you in October. Lisa Dawn. T. Seguin. Garden Girl. Michael R. What's happening? There's my cuz. What's happening, cuz? I'm not going to hurt to spam here. I made a post called Atlas Shrugged, Helter Skelter 2020 on Longstar Odyssey. I think it's really interesting. Okay, there you go. Go check it out. Cheeky, I heard you broke out. I heard you broke out of the monkey cage. Good for you. Hope you're doing well. Megan McIntyre, Victoria V, J.R. Williams, Marie MacArthur. Strong lineup tonight. There's Marlene McNicholas. What's going on, Marine? Lils. There we go, Lils. There's Joe Mama. Ryan, the introspective worker. Frank Bry coming at us from Potato Land. All right. Looks like we're gathering a little good momentum here. We got 72 people in the house. Cheryl Luciavo. Michael Cannon Free. Good to see you. Tamara Garth, there she is. Rita Perea, there's Rita. Rita and I had a great session on Friday. God, fantastic working with Rita, and just as a client, as a human being, just have to say. Let's see, anybody else? We got Lynn in the house. What's going on, Lynn? Good to see you. And we're almost up to 84. Did I say hi to Garden Girl? If not, hi, Garden Girl. Charles Mazek. What's going on, Charles? Good to have you. Let's see. We get up to 100. I'm going to kick this thing off. And we got T. Jordan. What's up, T. Jordan? You're up. That's what's up. I'm a female. Michelle Canafree. My bad. I'm sorry. It's a little dark out here, Michelle. We don't want to confuse you with Michelle Michael. That would not be a good thing because that definitely means something other than what you want to be known for. Trust me on that. Won't make that mistake again. Angela Nelson in the house. There's Faith. Faith's song is rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep them doggies rolling. This Faith gets ready to discover America. Faith, if I was you, I don't know, whenever you start a journey, you got to have a roll-off song. Right? Hey, there's Ham Mongoose. You got to have a roll-off song. Whenever you start a journey, that first song that's on your player, your iTunes, your whatever you got, that first song is important because that song sets the tone for your journey. Faith, I would suggest In Search of America by Yes, not Simon & Garfunkel. By Yes. By the way, Yes, a very underrated band. I think Yes, I think they've, they go off into their little meandering sort of phases, right? But man, could those guys play. And you listen to Steve Howe. Steve Howe is an incredibly underrated guitarist. I mean, really. You listen to the stuff that he's doing on In Search of America on that tune. He's getting like all funky and twangy and man, just killer stuff. Emily Moyer, the techno brat, has arrived. What's going on? News from the Patriot Jam owner has opened a campaign office. Has reopened as a campaign office. Oh my God, that is so brilliant. He should get in touch with John J. Singleton. Love the band. Yes. Yes was very. Here's what I used to do. Okay. I used to buy album covers. When I was a kid, I used to buy album covers by the look of the album cover. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, it never failed me. Like if it was a cool album cover, hey, there's Ani Brito. If it was a cool album cover, right, I was all over it. Every now and then, I'd be fooled. Every now and then, I'd get the album cover and go, what the fuck is this, right? But most of the times, if it was a good album cover, the music was usually pretty good. You know? Remember the first time I went on that kind of that vibe? It was it was an album called Demons and Wizards by Uriah Heep. And I loved the album cover. It was all kind of mystical and warlocky and shit. And then I listened to the record and I'm like, man, this is great. I'm like digging this, like easy living, and because I've been forgiven, right? Since you've taken your place in my heart. So yeah, the album. So I got Yes. First Yes album I ever bought was Close to the Edge, and I just looked at that album cover. It was very simple, simple green. I'm like, let me play this thing. I got home and I played it, and it blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. I think I was about maybe 14 years old or 15 years old. I think about 14. Listen to this Yes record. I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And it was just so complex, And then Siberian Khatru and all that stuff. Just an incredible, incredible record. Then, of course, I got the Yes poster for my... but I never saw Yes. I did sit next to John Anderson one day. I did talk to John Anderson one time, many years later. And it seemed like a very nice guy. But Yes, totally underrated band. And even the second iteration, when they went away for a while and they came back with Trevor Rabin, that version of Yes is pretty damn good. Okay, who else do we have here? Did I buy Supertramp? No, I didn't have to buy Breakfast in America. You know why? Because it was on the fucking radio all the time. That's why I didn't have to buy that record. I didn't have to buy that record because it was on the radio the whole time. Every single song, the whole time. But I think I did own the first Supertramp record, Crime of the Century. I did own that record, which has Bloody Well Right on it, which it's a tune that I like. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Anybody else? Tales from Topic. Everything. Yeah, Yes was great. All the way through Relayer. Fantastic. Very underrated band. And, people think of these great guitar players, and Steve Howe is just a killer guitar player. I don't think Steve Howe gets the love that he deserves. And you know what? And Rick Wakeman left the band, and, they were still really good without Rick Wakeman. I mean, they were still really, really good without Rick Wakeman, and he was a big part of Yes. Anyway, I'm going all music nerdy on you guys tonight. Just going music nerdy. All right, anybody else? There's Shay Michelle. What's going on, Shay? Molly Hatchet. You know why you like Molly Hatchet album covers? Because they were done by Frank Frazetta. Frank Frazetta is one of the great comic artists of all time. If you ever want to watch a really interesting documentary, watch Fire and Ice. It's the biography of Frank Frazetta. It's a really, really interesting documentary. And Frank Frazetta was a fascinating guy. He was, as they say, a man's man. I mean, that's why, he, his his illustrations were very graphic. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was involved in some of the Conan comics, right? He gave Conan that look. I believe that was Frank Frazetta, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, wow, we're going back now. I'm trying to think of a record where I bought the record based on the album cover. and it just totally and completely sucked. I'm just trying to figure out if there was one band that was like that. It'll come to my mind at some point. But it was like, yeah, like, ugh. It's like, oh, the album cover is great. What happened here? I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little bit. But generally speaking, the good album cover usually translated into good music, right? That's usually how it worked. That was my experience. Definitely my experience. I don't want to waste too much time that I'm thinking. What was a really good album cover where it's like so great, but the band really sucked? I don't know, it'll come to me. Anyway, how is everybody tonight? We're here to talk astrology, and we're also going to mix in, of course, a little bit of current events, because that's what we do here in the big, wide, wonderful world of mundane astrology, which is the practice of looking at what's going on in the world, taking astrology, throwing it up against the wall, and finding out how we can decode this so-called reality that we're living in, which is getting stranger and stranger every day. From the accusations that the speech by Joe Biden at the DNC, which everybody lauded like it was, the Gettysburg Address, there are accusations now that are coming out that it was a deep fake, that there was deep fake going on there, which wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, because they need all the help they can get with good old Sleepy Joe. And by the way, at the convention, did you notice how Kamala, AOC nominated Bernie Sanders for president? What was that about? I'm going to second the nomination for Bernie Sanders as president. Where did that come from? And really, what's behind that? Since, of course, Joe Biden accepted the nomination as president. And then you have Kamala Harris, or the woman who passed for Kamala Harris, because she didn't really look like Kamala Harris in a lot of it. Very bizarre stuff. So it was a very strange convention. It was the first virtual convention. All the Zoom stuff, you know what it's getting us used to? It's getting us used to virtual reality. It's getting us used to not being in a physical world. That's what all the Zoom meetings and all the Zoom productions are about. It's taking us out of that physical place and that physical space, and it's putting us into that virtual space. It's exactly what it's doing. I was surprised that they didn't hook up the DNC with Oculus and do a full-on immersive 3D virtual reality convention. I mean, it would have been a lot more interesting than whatever it is they did this last week. I mean, it's bizarro land. And I don't know if you caught some of the daytime speeches, but holy shit. I mean, really strange stuff. They had a woman who was a non-identifying, mer girl, mer human, queen mer human. I mean, it was just so bizarre. So bizarre. She's self-evolving queen mer, non-identifying, trans-binary, this whole litany of titles, and then going on and on about how unfair things are. It's just and how she's hoping for a world that is better and more fair. I mean, they were busting out the Trans All-Star crew. The Trans All-Star team is part of the DNC. You didn't see it during the day because most people were working. I think some people are still working now, believe it or not. But if you're remotely paying attention, even if you weren't, Tucker Carlson was, and so was Fox News. And so he put that up on his show last week, and you watch some of this stuff. It's just mind-blowing. It's like, holy shit. Are people really buying into this? I mean, this is just totally bizarre. Totally bizarre. But this is not the type of socialism that the American people will ultimately accept. They won't do it. They won't accept this kind of socialism. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. They will try, and they will have the Chinese influence coming through these governors and these mayors and, all these little, potentates that are doing the bidding of the Chinese. Oh, by the way, California's on fire. Talk about Mars, right? We got Mars and Aries, hot, trining that Leo sun, 1 million acres on fire in California, mild stomping grounds, Santa Cruz, Lake Berryessa. They evacuated the town that I used to live in, La Honda. That fire is getting real close to Silicon Valley, very close to Silicon Valley. And guess what California did? California asked New Zealand and Australia for help with the fires. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, so is that it now? Is that what we're getting? We're getting like this Chinese constellation of nation states. Is Gavin Newsom reaching out to his new governor pals of Australia and New Zealand to help him with the fires? The thing with the fires that always flipped me out a little bit was that they have these really massive Russian tankers. Massive. Like the Russians have these massive planes that they can fill out and just dump huge amounts of water or huge amounts of fire retardant laced water on fires. These things are enormous. And do you think that the state of California, who has a history of fire after fire after fire, wouldn't have enough money in their budget to buy like one or two of these things? Like at least two, and you could even hire on a crew from Russia to come in and hang out and live there and teach everybody how to fix them and, buy enough parts to keep the things going. If you backup engines, why not? No, instead they have these other, planes. And this is why government just absolutely blows my mind. It's like, here's the solution right in front of you. Get one of these big ass Russian tankers, which they do use, by the way. They just don't use them in California. But California's on fire. We got hot Mars. We got record temperatures all over the country. And then we got people pushing back now. The pushback, it's starting. It's starting. Finally, the pushback on being locked down and the masks started. Well, you know what happened the last time we did this? You know what happened finally? You know what Earthlings are like? Earthlings are kind of like, we're kind of like bulls. We're kind of like bulls and cows, to be honest with you. Because, the bulls is sitting there, poke. And finally the bull says, I've had enough. And then the bull has to get some momentum up, right? Get some momentum up. And then once the momentum starts to happen, look out. It's like a bull in the china shop. So the last time, we decided, or, the Earthlings here decided that they had enough and started to organize and go to the state capitals. What happened? Well, the George Floyd thing happened. That's what happened. And all of a sudden it became the Russian tanker dumping, right, all this water, dousing the efforts of people to get the attention of the people that theoretically work for them. And guess what? They did a very good job of stopping that. So here we are again. It's starting to happen again. There were big protests in, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, London, Manchester. If Sherry's in the house, it's pretty late for Sherry. She'll be back tomorrow. London, Manchester. If I'm not mistaken, Ireland. Jim Core of the vocal group, the Cores, led a big protest in Ireland yesterday. And so things are starting to happen now. Things are starting to go off. Melbourne, you still have a big issue on your hands. Holy shit. I've been reading more and more about what's going on there. I mean, there are cops they have literally, not just the cops now, but the army is in the streets of Melbourne. They've closed off the entrances and the exits to the city. You're being asked for your papers. They're apparently smashing through windows in order to either get the people with the masks or get their documents or whatever this is. I mean, this is not good. I mean, how is this not a human rights violation? Well, I know why it's not a human rights violation. It's not a human rights violation because guess what? The world is suffering from a so-called pandemic. Yeah, right. All 450 people in Australia. Let's see. Guess who's going to be on the show this week? Mickey Willis, who is the director of Pandemic 1 and Pandemic 2, will be joining me this week. I'm going to be doing shows this week. One of my spiritual advisors that I consulted with said, you need to keep doing the work, Robert. You need to keep doing the work. You just need more sleep. It's like, okay. So I'm going to do the shows this week. There's going to be a little shorter. But I am going to have Mickey Willis on Tuesday. You don't want to miss that, okay? This is the documentary that came out at the same time as what? Shadowgate? And what got all the press? What got all the buzz? What got all the controversy? Shadowgate and Pandemic Part 2 got banned, essentially, without a lot of buzz. Banned without buzz. So we're gonna Mickey on Tuesday. Why did my thing get all fuzzy? Hold on a second. I should be doing that. It's a little moist out here tonight. It's a little humid. By the way, I got a hawk. I got a baby hawk living in the tree back here. I heard it earlier. It's really cool. I think I saw the mama on Friday or Thursday fly into my tree in the front yard, just hang out in the tree for a while. Love the hawk energy. One of my favorite animals. One of my totems, by the way, is the hawk. So anyway, Mickey Willis, he'll be here on Tuesday. We'll talk pandemic. He won't be here. He'll be on the 15 Minutes of Flame channel. You don't want to miss that interview. You don't want to miss it. And I'm really close to getting 2,000 subscribers. 2,000 subscribers on the 15 Minutes of Flame side. If you haven't subscribed, go do that. Who knows? Maybe YouTube will send me a keychain or something like that. Maybe I'll get a little branded keychain. 2,000 ain't nothing, man. But, it's fine. It's all good. It is all good. Whoever shows up. And, there were 12 people in history that changed the course of history. You don't need 200,000. Trust me on that. Okay, let's get into a little invocation here. Why don't you just step out? I'm going to step out. And there you go. There's the void. Just take that void in. Here we go. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God of the great central sun, which is the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel, in this time of great transition, we ask that only the highest and best information come through this channel, but not only this channel, but everyone who is listening to, participating with, and viewing through this channel. We ask for and gracefully accept the qualities of strength, fortitude, commitment, courage, discernment, humor, flexibility, empathy, compassion, perspective, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, clarified, purified, and removed so that we may re-enter after this stream sovereign as we were when we did. All right, that's it. Thanks for being in the void for a minute. All right, let's get going. Let's get cracking. A lot to talk about. We got a lot of time. Why don't we start off with the banger? Okay, so I've been very interested in this Tori Mars Lindemann. Okay, because she is the link between Millie Weaver and Patrick Berge. Patrick Berge has done a number of interviews already. Bill Mitchell, Sarah Westfall. I mean, he's been out there. The IAA, I guess what it's called, IAA stuff has been out there. So Tori was the connecting dot between Berge and Millie. Okay. So Tori has been kind of or Tor, however you say her name, Tor, Terpsichore, Terpsichore. She's got a number of different names. And she's been a flashpoint in a lot of ways. And interestingly enough, I think she might be taking more heat than Millie. When you see her chart, you'll understand why. I think she's taking more heat, although Millie is taking a little bit of heat. I got to say she's taking a little bit of heat. Because, the whole thing just looks like now is about her basically throwing her mother to the ground and taking the mother's cell phone and smashing the cell phone. I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know what's up there, right? I don't know what's up there. But that seems to be what the secret indictment. I don't, the whole thing is just too weird. Is layers. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a there. If you watch the video, you watch the documentary, you'll learn some stuff. You'll definitely learn some stuff. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it. It's watchable. I don't know where I guess you can watch it on BitChute now. But the person who is the one who seems to be perhaps even more controversial than Millie is Tori Terpsichore Mars Lindemann. All right. So I was very interested in what this person's chart would look like. And again, I'm just going to cast a sunrise chart because if I don't know the birth time, that's what I do. I cast a sunrise chart. It's probably the most honest way to cast a chart without going into a lot of prior history. And trust me, when you get into a prior history, it is a labyrinth. It is a real labyrinth to try to understand or figure out who this person is, because a lot of things just don't match up. She claims she was part of naval intelligence, and you can go online, you can see that she has all these degrees, University of Kentucky, Harvard, a school in London. I mean, man, this person is kind of lit up with degrees. And when you listen to her, she's actually quite intelligent. She should there it's not like she's like, faking on the knowledge side of things. She knows a few things, all right? That's pretty clear. But I'm going to show you kind of both why she is, I think, on some level interesting, compelling, and has, I think, a streak of genius, and why she cannot be trusted. Okay, they're both in the chart, and I go into this stuff like trying to be as fair as I possibly can, and I'll also show you why she is having like a kind of prominent moment in time. And I think this is really kind of a score for, tropical astrology, Western Placidus, tropical astrology in the mundane practice. I'll show you why. Before I do that, though, why don't we just get a kind of a visual on what she looks like. Now, if you haven't seen her, right, you'll get to kind of see the visual here. And she's taken a lot of heat, but she also has a very rabid following. And it's one of these followings where if you kind of go up against her, then the Tor army, or the I wouldn't say it's a troll army, but they come out in force. I've seen this, but I've also noticed that she has been she's been losing some followers. Like I think she had a lot of intensity and a lot of momentum around what she was doing, and now it's starting to drop off a bit. But here, let me give you a visual of Miss Torre. Let me get into a StreamYard so you guys can eyeball exactly what I'm talking about here. So this is there you go. This is what she looks like. You've probably seen her. This was a theoretical younger version of her. She kind of obscures. She likes to obscure her face a little bit. Glasses, hat. But I tell you, whether she's real, fictional, an asset, she's got cojones. I'll say that, because I've been going back and looking at some of her comments on certain message boards, and it's pretty consistent, I'd have to say. Now, here she is. She showed up on this thing. What is your point of view? She did like 3 segments on this thing. And I guess this is when she got into a beef with this congresswoman in North Dakota. And her last name was Buffalo. So, and I knew exactly what she was saying. And they were trying to turn her comments into missing children, about a threat, and that this woman, this Buffalo woman, the Buffalo congresswoman, either her or the Native American children would go missing. It was like interpreted as a threat. And I know exactly what she was saying. What she was doing was she was putting her on blast about missing children. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. And she was trying to point out sort of the inconsistencies, right? So she's really popped up here. So why don't we just get into her chart? Let's look at her chart. And you'll see why I think she is both captivating on some level. Like she has this kind of like almost cult like vibe. Okay. And she also has a vibe that I would consider to be, well, let's just say plain fast and loose with reality. But again, not there's not something that's interesting, right? Because there is something interesting with this chart. And again, I'm just being fair here. I'm just being fair, right? So let me go. Let's get into this. So here's her chart. She was born on March 8th, 1978. Now, I just put it in why not? I think she may have been born in Portland. I don't know. She spent a lot of time in Portland. It's really interesting because if you go through her bio, it lists that she was working on, like, in this hospital as some kind of diversity administrator or something like that. And there's a lot of heavy duty Navy credentials that people seem to have proven are not true. She was basically in the Navy for 8 months, and she claims she had a Purple Heart and some other service medal, both of which are very difficult to get within 8 months. And she also listed herself as a seaman first class, and there is no such thing as a seaman first class. So she was using Army terminology, transposing it to kind of a Navy thing. And people in the Navy were paying attention. They're like, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. So her background is very, very suspect in a lot of ways. Now, that doesn't mean she doesn't know anything. She's actually very, very bright. So what's going on here? Well, we got a whole lot of Pisces. Whole lot of Pisces. Now, remember, this is a sunrise chart. So we've got the moon in Pisces, and this is really a balsamic moon. It's right there at the edge of the balsamic moon. Right there, right? 15 is a 10. 10 on the moon, 17 on the sun. So we got sun-moon conjunction in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, and look, there's that South Node in Aries. And that would mean that there would be a debilitated aspect around what? Armed services, armed forces. Debilitated aspect around that. So something's not right here. But, with all of this Pisces is, I think it's probably the most Pisces I've ever seen in one chart. Just take the part of fortune out of there. I mean, that might not be there based on the birth time. That's a lot of Pisces. And what she has going here is she's got a grand trine. Look at that. She has a grand water trine, which to me suggests that, there is a lot of energy in this chart. And the energy is working with Mars and Uranus. So with the Uranian energy, it gives her, and this is the flow, it gives her sort of the ability to think outside the box, talk about, so this is kind of wired up, right? So this is a person who has some circuitry, some real astrological circuitry. And there's some original thinking going on here. And with Mars trining pretty much, most of her planets, let's just go with Sun, Mercury, and Venus, there is also kind of an intensity there with Mars. Although in Cancer, that's kind of tidal. It's in, it's out, it's in, it's out, right? And then we have a Mars trine Uranus, and, that Mars gets activated when it gets into things like technology, right? Scorpio, secrecy. So I think her astrological chart makes her quite fluent in the sort of in the topics of conversation, or the fields of sort of like, dark espionage, intel, things like that. But Pisces is a sign that is very imaginative. It's a very creative sign. So what is the truth here? Is she a web weaver? Hello, Millie Weaver? Is that what's going on? Does she have some kind of real astrological connection that allows her to channel the forces of this grand trine, which I think is pretty interesting, actually. Like when I first looked at her chart, I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on there. Like this person is capable of really stirring up a lot of emotion. That's the nature of a grand water trine. And every single one of her inner planets, with the exception of Mars, is connected to Pisces. And so we know that when Pisces is really sort of, frothy and kind of, big, it channels lots of emotional energy. And then when it goes in the other direction, it takes a big hit, right? It takes the hit of the scapegoat. So if that was the only these were the only aspects in her chart that were really front and center, I would say, wow, I think there's a there with this person. But let's talk about Neptune. Oh boy, let's talk about Neptune. Here comes Neptune, square to the moon, square to the sun. Neptune square Mercury, and by association, Venus. What have I talked about with Neptune squares? Right? When you get Neptune squares, there is debilitation. You got Neptunian challenges. Mercury Neptune squares to Mercury Neptune squares generally represent what? People that either exaggerate the truth or are liars. Sun Neptune square, a person who could, in some ways, paint themselves as somebody different. Right? The sun's the identity, and Neptune square to the sun could be a very different portrayal of their identity. It's also somebody, in some ways, who could have some real confidence issues, self-esteem issues. Well, that's slightly negated by the sun trine to Mars. So here we have somebody who has like really big confidence. Like this, when you listen to her, she's very confident. Like this is a person who really believes what they say. And I listened to an interview with her with this guy. What was his name? Paladin. I think his name is Paladin Whitehead or something like that. And she was talking about the Dan White and Harvey Milk and George Moscone and Jim Jones and Guyana and Leo Ryan. And she told the story pretty well. I have to say, she was pretty detailed on a lot of different things. The only problem is that if you really look into it, a lot of that stuff didn't happen. A lot of it did not happen. If you really look at what happened with Dan White and how Dan White had to get into City Hall and all that bullshit, it's like it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. And then who gets off? Who gets off on killing somebody? Two people, Moscone and Milk. Who gets off on that with a Twinkie defense? Really? And then the guy's name just happens to be White. If you look at Dan White's background, it's kind of sketchy. Like it's kind of hard to really like put things together with Dan White. And then the whole thing with Jonestown. And when you get into Jonestown's, very, very weird. When you start to really look at the details around Jonestown and the amount of cyanide that they needed, right? The amount of cyanide they needed to do everything that they did, it was like, where do they get the cyanide? Like you would have had to have gotten that cyanide probably from some supplier in the U.S., and it was like, you would not be able, unless it was a CIA person who just brought it in, which is possible. But when you look at Jonestown, there's some really weird things around Jonestown. So she was describing what happened, which is pretty much what happened when it happened. But when you look at it, there's a really good chance that what happened didn't really happen that way. It didn't really happen. It's like most reality. So she's somebody who has a tremendous amount of confidence. When you hear her talk, like there is not a scintilla of doubt in anything she says. That is the Mars trine to Mercury, the Mars trine to Venus, the Mars trine to the sun. But what's really going on? What's it really covering up? The sun square to the moon, sun square to the Neptune square to the moon, Neptune square to the sun, and Neptune square to Mercury. So there's this really interesting kind of conflict going on with an immense amount of confidence, an immense amount of surety, with an immense amount of baggage, with an immense amount of, whoa, I got buzzed on there, man. Whoa. Maybe it was an agent of Tor. Anyway, an immense amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Deception. There's like this, when we get into Neptune squares, they're really deceptive, like super deceptive. So again, I'm not saying there's not a there there. There is definitely this is a very interesting chart. But let's look at Jupiter now. Jupiter's coming in from the other angle. And what does Jupiter do? Jupiter makes things bigger, right? Makes things bigger. So she has this chart, which is really expanding. It's expanding, but it's also creating kind of a, Neptune creates illusion during this with those squares, and the illusion is either projected onto other people or the person that is going through the Neptune squares or has the Neptune squares. They're dealing with their own sense of illusion or delusion, because Neptune plays a role there too. So Jupiter's really blowing the whole thing up as well. We got the Jupiter square to the Sun, Jupiter square Mercury, Jupiter square Venus. Those are tall tales. Those are really tall tales. And look where the true node is. It's right down there, and it's conjunct Jupiter. And she's really just kind of blown up here recently, right? I mean, I didn't know about her until about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And that would coincide with the true node being an orb with Jupiter in her chart. So this is actually a really good kind of lesson in Western astrology, right? If we agree that her Jupiter is in Gemini and the true node is there, of course, there it is, kind of going off, right? So I think she's got some issues coming up, and the issues that I see is when Neptune moves closer into orb with Pallas, and with the South Node moves closer into orb with Pallas and Neptune, and that'll happen after the first of the year. And again, I think she has a gift for pattern recognition with Sagittarius, with Pallas and Sagittarius. This is actually a really interesting set of aspects, right? Because we have Vesta and Sag, Truth, the flame of truth, Neptune and Sag. And again, I've talked about this generation. It was born Neptune and Sagittarius. It's a very interesting generation, very spiritual generation. And then Pallas here, which is about pattern recognition. So again, I think there's a there. I think there's something that's off though. And again, I'm just being honest with my assessment of her chart. And I think she's got some issues coming up. I think she has some issues with that South Node. And as soon as the true node clears Jupiter in her chart and begins to separate, you'll see some of those issues come up. She already had to lose one of her Twitter accounts. I think it was Taurus Says, and now she's Tweet Words. And, and you see this pattern with her. Like, she moves around a lot. She was in Portland. She was in Minot. Now she's in Ohio, which is where Millie Weaver lives. And she's got the true node in Libra. So obviously I think she works well in tandem when she's, on somebody's show and does radio. Although I think when you listen to her on her YouTube channel, again, very confident. You see the confidence playing her. But I'll tell you what's really interesting. The only thing is she has in her chart that's even remotely Earth-related is that Chiron in Taurus. And what have I told people about with Chiron and Taurus? It's a generational subgeneration has a hard time being in their body, being a human. Life on Earth, the Earth is tough. This is not a grounded chart. Even the sextile to Saturn is, it might help, but this is not a grounded chart at all. This is not somebody who has her feet beneath her, right? This is a chart that really has just a ton of water, just a lot of, and there's not a lot of air either. She's got Pluto and the true node, and then she has Jupiter. Jupiter will make up for that air, especially when it squares all those planets, all those Piscean planets. But not a very grounded person. And again, is that the crime of the century to not have a grounded chart? I don't think so. But this is a chart that's deeply influenced by water, by emotion, by theater, drama. She presents herself in a pretty dramatic way. When you look at her pictures, she's got that kind of dramatic flair about her. And she actually, when she talks, she has a very kind of hypnotic sort of vibe in a lot of ways. You know, if you don't look at her and just hear her talk, it's like, you know, she has that kind of really graceful sort of vibe, you know. That's how that works. Now Neptune is on her, it's been on her sun, and it's getting ready to kind of get closer to Mercury in her chart. And she's got a Neptune square going on. And I don't know, this is going to be an interesting time for this person. Very interesting time. And Neptune will retrograde to what, about 19 again? So it's going to be in that square position for a while. And as it moves forward, it's going to square Jupiter. I don't know. I don't, and again, I'm trying to be really fair, but I don't get that this is going to end well. Like, I think that she's like, a bit of a supernova here. She's a flash. And she may come back, you know, this person, sounds like they've come back on more than one occasion in a number of different areas of their life. Now, the thing that's interesting is that when you get into her chart, not her chart, but her CV, you go to her LinkedIn page, you look at all the stuff she's done, and especially the Navy stuff, it lists naval intelligence. Naval intelligence. Okay. You know who else is naval intelligence? Jack Posobiec. Jack Posobiec is naval intelligence. And they were outing Jack Posobiec. I think Millie was outing Jack Posobiec, or Patrick Berge was outing Jack Posobiec. Most people know Jack Posobiec's naval intelligence. So there's this thought that if she is naval intelligence, that a lot of this stuff would be a smokescreen, not this. This is, you can find stuff out here. Like, this is really the true, I think this is the true CV. This is the true LinkedIn. But if they wanted to create a lot of different, if they wanted to create a lot of smoke and mirrors, they could. They absolutely could. They could have all these different kind of identities, all these different kinds of, jobs, affiliations, degrees. And then the next thing you know, you're just kind of spinning around trying to find out who this person is. And if you wanted to create a real spy, what you would do is you would create somebody who looks utterly fake, and then that they would be denounced. But really, what you'd be doing is just kind of, you'd be outing them in a particular way, but they would still have their cover, right? This is kind of like the revelation of the method. So this is an interesting sort of silent. And with this chart, you don't know. You really don't know, because of the opposition with Jupiter to Neptune and this big fat T square, which is all about expanding, illusion, delusion, confusion. This is the illusion, delusion, confusion chart, powered by, I think, some real novelty, and I think a high-powered IQ. I don't think this is a person that's not intelligent. They're just not. They're not spouting stuff. Millie Weaver doesn't come off as the brightest, bulb on the lamp. But that's not to say that she's not bright, because we've seen people who, particularly in the past, women who portrayed themselves as blonde and kind of, lightheaded, and they've actually been really, really smart. Like Marilyn Monroe was really smart. Jane Mansfield was really fucking smart. Carol Wayne, who used to show up on The Tonight Show, really smart. So, it's kind of a bit of a stereotype. And I'm going to give Millie Weaver a little bit of a pass, but she doesn't come off the same way as Tor. Tor comes off as being very authoritative. That's that Mars trine with, her sun. And it's interesting that she would be a part of the Navy, or that would be the armed forces that she would align with. And there's a document, you can see her as a sea woman. But again, her term of service is only about 8 months. I mean, that's what it lists. But again, if you were naval intelligence, right, when you may want to create a false reality for this person. And so people would go over there, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's a fake, she's phony, she's bullshit. And guess what? She might really be intelligence. So this is the time we're living in too. This is where we have the true node in Gemini, where this whole idea of like spies and shadow gates and subterfuge and the revelation of the method I mean, it's all out there right now. It's like on, what was it, on Thursday? Steve Bannon and all those guys get arrested. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, these are guys that are supposedly on the right, and certainly Trump supporters. That guy, Brian Colfage, has been on Fox News quite a bit. The acting administrator of the DEA was part of that thing. By the way, Bannon paid $5 million. It was a $5 million bail, 10%, $500,000. So he's back in the street. He pled not guilty. Again, Southern District Court of New York. We know that that's a court that has been very anti-Trump. But again, do we really know now if somebody who is anti-Trump is really anti-Trump? Maybe they're actually working for Trump, but they basically look like they're anti-Trump. They purport themselves as being. This is where we have to be really, really careful. And if there's anything that the Shadowgate has to offer, is that, yes, not everybody is who they purport themselves to be. That we have the deep state infiltrating the alt-right, and we have the alt-right or the conservatives on the other side infiltrating that side. It goes back and forth and back and forth. So I think her chart really typifies exactly what we're going through right now during these times. It's a very interesting chart. Very, very interesting chart. One that has a great amount of potential, and a chart that has a great amount of subterfuge, delusion, illusion, and confusion, both kind of personally and collectively or transpersonally. So that's my take here on Miss Mara's Lindemann's chart. And she's got that south node in Aries. Chiron's floating around that south node. Now, it will go retrograde, and we'll see what happens there. Mars, which kind of rhymes with her last name, Mars, is obviously in Aries, and it's going to be in Aries for a while, and it's going to mostly play nice, except the square that's going on with Mars in Cancer right now. When it retrogrades, it comes back again. There's going to be more conflict there, and she's, if anything, she's feisty. She's feisty. She is kind of a scrapper and a fighter. I will give that to this woman. But what is she scrapping and fighting for and against? And I think that this is a chart right here that also has to overcome a certain amount of I think that this chart has a high degree of redemption in it. A high degree of redemption. And this is a person whose husband is in prison right now for molesting a 10-year-old boy. That's part of the public record. I'm not telling you anything that's not out there. She never addresses it. And by the way, I don't blame her for not addressing that. I don't blame her for not addressing that. But here we go. There's the Neptune square. Neptune square to the moon. Neptune square to the sun. She's sleeping with the enemy. This is a person who I'm sure is gung-ho about liberating kids and making sure kids don't get molested. In fact, I know that that's part of her MO. And then what does she do? She marries a guy who molests a kid. There's your Neptune squares right there. There's your Neptune squares in action. So this is a chart that has a lot of redemption. It has a lot of redemption. She's got a Pluto-Mars opposition. She better watch out for that Pluto-Mars opposition. That's a lot of intense and heavy energy to handle. Very heavy. And Pluto's going to come back around and, hit that Mars again. I would say, walk softly, especially with that Mars square to Pluto, Mars square, Mars Pluto square. I don't know. That's intense. A lot of intensity there. Big time intensity. She may want to take a little of the heat off and a little of the smoke off. What's interesting about her? Besides what I just shared. And I think this is an interesting chart, by the way. But I also think there's some deep, deep, deep flaws in this chart. Very deep flaws. It's probably one of the most paradoxical charts I've ever seen. Right? Like, this is novelty. It's got a touch of genius. There's drama. There's the ability to channel emotion. And then there's all this deception, downfall, degradation. It's very interesting. The trine with Saturn to the midheaven. This person doesn't really give up all that much. Doesn't give up. So, they'll be around. if they get through the Pluto-Mars opposition and the Mars-Pluto square and the Mars-Mars square. But I'll show you something interesting. She shares her birthday with another, how shall we say, interesting persona. It's not the same year. It's not the same year, but it is the same day. And I'll show you the birthday that she shares. Okay? Some of you might know this. You guys are sharp. You're a sharp bunch. I'll show you the day, the birth date that she shares right now. She has the same birthday as David Wilcock. I shit you not. They're both born on March 8th. And what do we deal with David Wilcock, right? He's like a male version of Tori Speaks. I swear to God. David, leave your wife. Leave your wife. This is your true soulmate. That is your true soulmate. Together, the metafiction that the two of you could cook up would be legendary. Legendary. Like what mythos could you reincarnate the two of you as? Jesus, Mary, possibly. You may have used that on your current bride. But David, I would dump her, and I would not waste any time. You and Tori were meant for each other. Here we go. There's that. You know, I read this interview on this website with David and his wife, and it must have gone on shit. I think he reprinted it on the Divine Cosmos site. It was the most self-indulgent interview about a relationship that I'd ever seen. It's like, oh my God, married. Oh boy, married. Jeez. If I got married, this would not be happening. And that's a big if. All right, isn't that a trip, huh? She shares the same birthday as David Wilcock. Oh, it's 9/22. There we go. There it is, right there. Let's see what else. Holy crap, me too. The cicadas. Yeah, the cicadas are badass here. Really badass. Bernard Gunther. What else do we have? Take my soul and suss me out. Take my life. I'm in doubt. What else do we have? The body's an organic portal. You guys get your own show going on over there. All right, I'll get back to my show. I'll check in with you later. Okay, so there we go. There is the chart for one Miss Tori Mars Lindemann. So I want to look up a couple of charts. I want to look up New York's chart and find out what's going on with New York. And this is not good. It is not good. Let me show you what's happening in New York's chart. And, you know, there are rumors not unfounded that we are witnessing the death of New York, and I believe that to be true. And when I show you the chart actually agrees with me. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. So a lot of these cities and countries were all chartered. Isn't that interesting? Chartered right around between 1850 and the late 1890s. Now, New York existed obviously prior to 1898, but they essentially consolidated and incorporated in 1898. So I'm showing you the incorporation chart. Right there. If I'm not mistaken, New York was actually discovered from the actual island. Manhattan was discovered, I believe, at least this is what Wikipedia says, on 9/11. If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, let's get into this, and I'll verify the Wikipedia. It's not 9/11 in 2000, but prior to that. So here you go. Here's your chart for New York City. New York City, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So we have the incorporation time where they put it at 12 a.m. January 1st. Hello, there we go. January 1st, 1898. Jupiter on the ascendant with Libra there. You know, you would think that New York might have Mars and Scorpio on the ascendant, but it doesn't. It has Jupiter and Libra. not always sort of ingratiating itself to citizens of the world, but I like New Yorkers. I really do. I really do. They're some of my favorite people in the world. I love New Yorkers. And even if you have transplanted and lived there, you've got, it's like you're pre-qualified in some ways. Not everybody can live in New York City. Not everybody can live in New York City. Yeah, I think it's a place that pre-qualifies people to live there. So here we have Jupiter on the ascendant in Libra. Here's where the action really is. It's right down here. It is right down here in the fourth house. We have Mercury and the true node in the fourth house. You know, that's power. We have the sun exact the IC, Capricorn. I mean, this is a zone of power and hierarchies. This is what Capricorn represents. Some might call it a nest. But we have the true node in Capricorn at 26 degrees in the fourth house. So obviously, there are a lot of powerful people that may make New York City their home. Donald Trump was one of them. But guess what? That's ending. That is ending. Now, when I work with astrology or work with a client and they have Saturn moving through their fourth house, 99.9% of the time, guess what they do? They move. They move. And if they're not moving, what are they doing? They're reinforcing the structure of their home. Why? Because number one, you are remaking and recreating your home space. Why is that? That's what Saturn does. Whatever house it goes through, it's supposed to get you to reorder that house. You structure, order, discipline, and you throw shit out that's not working for you, and then you keep the things that are, and then hopefully, right, you can basically buckle that Saturn on and then use it to your advantage. It is, you know, it's only a devil. Saturn is only a devil. Saturn is only Satan when you fight against it. And I know that sounds, you know, that sounds paradoxical or it sounds upside down or inverted, but it's true. Like you're there to learn a lesson, and then when you work with it, guess what? You incorporate it. Funny word, funny term to use for Saturn, incorporation, but not so funny. It's actually a fitting word. Anyway, so what are we seeing now in New York City? I'll tell you what we're seeing. We're seeing people move the hell out. That's what we're seeing. There's your Saturn in the fourth house. Mass exodus. New York's not moving. The people in New York are moving. We also have Pluto here. Look at this. Pluto is right on the true node in Capricorn in New York's fourth house. So there's a profound transformation happening in the city, and it's been going on for a while. It started probably when Michael Bloomberg was phasing out and Bill de Blasio was phasing in. And de Blasio right now he's the wrecking ball for New York City. So, but who's doing this? I mean, obviously he's taking orders. I mean, Bill de Blasio is nothing but an errand boy. So when we look at the true node in Capricorn in the fourth house, you know, this is the center of power for the city. And the center of power, or what's happening to the center of power, is being dictated by those in the center of power. That's exactly what's happening. So they're the people who are essentially involved in the hierarchies of New York are hooking up. They're hooking up the hoses for the gas chamber. That's what's happening. And we know why it's happening, because they want to blow this thing out. They don't want New York to look like New York. They want no vestige of whatever New York looked like or was or represented, became famous for, known for, became a brand, became an archetype. They want that gone. And that's true for every American city. They want to wipe out the identity of every American city. They want nothing of those cities and their storied past to move forward into their future. That is the plan. And that's why they're taking a wrecking ball to New York. I was watching a video tonight. They were on the streets of Denver and they were smashing store windows in Denver. Smashing store windows in Denver. Do you think it's because there's racial inequality or social injustice in Denver? You know, is the long gone of, well, it's not a good choice of words. When you talk about George Floyd, use the word long gong. It's not a good choice of words. But is the long gong of George Floyd's death still reverberating? Right? Even now, is this why they're doing everything? No, of course not. They're doing it because, number one, they're being told to do it. They're being paid to do it. And number three, guess what? Whenever anything happens, nothing happens. So they're being encouraged on all levels. And this is what's happening all across the country. All across the country. It has not abated. In New York, which is really, Joe brought a Supertramp coming to America, right? What's the city? It's New York City. It is the city that has been absolutely typifies the American story. Give us your tired and huddled masses, all that stuff, right? That whole fairy tale. It's New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. I'll never forget when Levon Helm was being interviewed in The Last Waltz. And he and Robbie Robertson just fucking high as fuck on coke. I mean, they're just coked out of their heads. And they're coked out and they're drinking whiskey. And he's thinking, yeah, the first time I came to New York, she kicked my ass. But you know what? I dusted myself off. And when I went back, it was great. And really, that's New York in a nutshell. My first time in New York blew my mind. Wasn't ready for it. I had to leave. I had to get out. And I went back again. The second time I went back, fantastic. Always loved New York after that. But right now, they are taking a wrecking ball. They're taking a wrecking ball to the city that is synonymous with the American story. But it's not alone. It's happening all across America right now. That South Node is moving closer and closer and closer to Neptune. It'll be there by the end of the year. It does not bode well for New York City. It does not bode well at all. And by this time next year, that true note on Neptune still doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well. Even if it was the South, it doesn't bode well. Not in the ninth house. Why? Because ultimately, when this is happening, right over here, right, what do we have? We have over here, we have the South Node conjuncting Venus, the South Node conjuncting Mars. That's kind of separating now. But the two are going to meet, right? The South Node in the third house here, true up here, Neptune, conjuncting Neptune. Not good. Not good. Because the third house represents law and order right here, because it's ruled by Sagittarius, right? Defunding the cops right there. South Node on Mars. True node up here in Neptune. It's like, hey, isn't this great? This is what de Blasio was talking about. This guy's a piece of work, man. He's a fucking piece of work. He said, we now have set the record for having the least amount of people incarcerated in the history of New York. Yeah, because you let them all out in the streets. And they're all out killing and raping and shooting and burning shit down. And yet he's touting the triumph of their justice system, and that it really is something to be really proud of, right? That's that true node, Neptune. It's kind of delusional up there in Gemini. I have to say it's a bit delusional. It's pointing these things out. And here we go, South Node. It's just been rough, man. And there's a lot of charisma with this city, right? Third house. We got Mars and Sag. We got Venus and Sag. There's always a lot of charisma. People from, all over the world wind up in New York. It is really the melting pot, right? It is the melting pot right there. 29th degree. Well, this is not good. Because I'll tell you right now, the cops in New York with that South Node there are taking a beating. An absolute beating. This is intense. We're watching the death of an American city as Pluto transits through the fourth house of New York. Saturn is there, and people are abandoning New York like you would not believe. People are abandoning New York. Let's see. What else do we have here? What else? Anything else going on? Oh, the Neptune square. Look at that. We got Neptune square happening. Again, delusional. Totally delusional. Neptune is going through the sixth house, which is health and purpose and work and service. And it's not good. It's not good. People are leaving. Their businesses are being shuttered, closed up. And right now, one of the things that I saw is that people are allowed to go They're allowed to go outside and eat and have wine. But how long is that going to last? How long are they going to be able to go outside and, dine al dente? Not very long, because the weather's going to turn. It's going to turn in a couple months here, and that's going to all shut down. And when that does, whatever strands of income these people can have by having people outside, they'll be gone. They will be gone. So New York, you have issues. You have big issues. I would not be surprised if some kind of an event happens with New York. I would not be surprised if something significant and drastic happens there. Even like they don't really want to destroy a bunch of infrastructure. I don't think that's really what they want to do. They just want to destroy enough so that the remnants and the memory of an American city gets eradicated, because they want new cities. New cities, new names, new histories. There is no history. Why? Because it's all systemically racist. All product of colonialism. They are decolonializing the American cities before our very eyes. There was something else here. What was it? Maybe it's that Mars trine. Maybe it's that Mars trine to Sag, Mars trine to Venus, Mars conjunct the moon in Aries. Maybe that energy might actually mean something, and New Yorkers might actually do. But, when I think of New York too, I'm not just thinking about the city, although this is the city. There's also the state. And the state has some really onerous legislation around vaccines and a bunch of shit. I mean, they're putting the lockdown on New York City. And I'm just wondering how long people will actually take it there. And there's a lot to New York. There's Long Island, right? Long Island, isn't that right? There's Long Island, New Jersey. Long Island's New Jersey. But there's obviously Manhattan and Brooklyn and Staten. There's a lot there, even though it's quite concentrated. Maybe when Mars finally goes direct and begins to trine that moon in Aries and gets into that trine with Mars and Venus. But I don't know. I just think I know for a fact the New Yorkers are buying guns now. And that is a tough city to get a gun. That's a very tough city. They made having guns in that city almost impossible. It's like California and New York and Massachusetts are three of the hardest states for guns, and people are saying they're trying to get firearms. I don't know what's going to happen when the cops go away, because they will go away. Well, I know what's going to happen. They'll be hired as private security forces. You know what else is really interesting is they got a new Batman movie coming out. And Batman, Gotham City is New York. Everybody knows that. It's New York. Gotham is New York. And I think there's a new spin on this Batman played by Robert Pattinson, who I think was in the vampire movie. The big vampire movie hit craze. Was it Moonlight? I forget the name of that. It was huge. But he played the young, kind of, sexy, dark Gothic vampire, right? There's a scene I just watched the trailer for Batman. There's a scene where he's just gotten off of his motorcycle. And I think he's watching somebody give a speech. And in the scene, he's wearing a mask. I guess it's a mask that you wear because you wear a motorcycle, you don't want that dust in your face. But this is him as Bruce Wayne, and he's wearing a fucking mask. The other thing that I saw that was interesting about the trailer is that when he goes up to Wayne Manor, instead of all the guts of the Batcave being inside the Batcave, they're actually outside. They're outside the Batcave. Like, what's that about? What is that about? Well, I know what that's about. They're getting people used to having their shit outside. That's what it's about. Oh, you want to go, you can't eat inside, but guess what? You can eat outside. You can eat outside. Oh, you can't exercise indoors, can you? But you can exercise outdoors. Oh, yeah. They're getting used to people to having those things they do inside. You're doing them outside now. Sex? No. You can't do that inside anymore. You got to go outside now and have sex. Yeah. How many people do you think would do that, by the way? How many people do you think would do that? That would be a real reality check, wouldn't it? It would be like, do you think people in third world countries have the opportunity, the right, the privilege to copulate behind closed doors? Of course they don't. Of course they don't. Sometimes to express their love, they have to do it where their love expresses itself through them, which in many cases could be outside. So guess what? In order for you to really eradicate your white privilege, you go outside. You go outside and do it. How many people do you think would do that? I'll bet you there would be nincompoops that would do that. That they would proclaim that by screwing outside, they'd be divesting themselves of their white privilege. How long do you think that's going to be? I'm throwing this out there in jest, but only in jest. Anyway, that's part of the new Batman movie. The other thing that I noticed is Commissioner Gordon, he's not white anymore. And that's okay. That's okay. You can tell a story any way you want. Nick Fury used to be white. He's not white anymore. James West from the Wild West used to be white. Well, he's not white anymore either. Yeah. So does Commissioner Gordon have to be white now? But it's just interesting that now, well, he's being played by somebody else. Jeffrey Wright, if I'm not mistaken. I guess they got the right guy for the role. And I think if I can kind of follow the thread a little bit there, I think that Bruce Wayne uncovers a dark secret about his past, that perhaps the Wayne fortune was built on the backs of slavery. What do you bet that Bruce Wayne finds out that his parents were slave owners? What do you bet that happens? I'd make that bet in a New York minute. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. Now, I wanted to take a look at something along the lines with, like, say, Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump has done quite well in New York City, hasn't he? So is there a correlation between one's astrological chart and the place that one lives, works, and dwells in? Are there positive effects? Are there negative effects? Let's check it out. So here's the synastry chart for Trump in New York City. So the first thing that really jumped out to me when I saw this is Trump has Jupiter in Libra right in the first house of New York. So who's benefiting from the astrological relationship with the city? Well, Donald Trump is. And that's moolah, right? So New York's ascendant and Jupiter is sitting right in Trump's second house. Right there. And he also has Chiron, and he has Juno and Neptune, all of which are in the sign of Libra. Of course, we've talked about the legendary Neptune squared Mercury in Trump's chart. But straight out of the gate, we've got prosperity. He's able to prosper, right, from New York's Jupiter right in the second house. And in a lot of ways, New York has prospered with Trump. He's part of the story. Now, you could also see that Trump is probably not well liked in New York City. Well, where do I see that? Well, a number of places. Here's the South Node. New York has its South Node in Cancer, and there's Trump's Venus, and there's Trump's Saturn. And what is Trump? He's a real estate developer. You know, it's very Cancerian. It has to do with the home. Initially, they did a lot of low rent apartments. That's how they made their money. It's how they got in the game. That's where you could get in the game. And a lot of people in New York did that. It's like playing Monopoly. You know, you buy a Baltic Place property, and hopefully you go around the board and get on Park Place by the time it's all said and done. But I think he has. I think Trump is very polarizing in general, and I'm not sure people in New York have always liked Donald Trump. They, have they always accepted Trump as one of their own? I'm not sure. And with Venus Saturn here on their south node, I think it makes it a bit more difficult. Now, with his Mercury on the midheaven, he has used New York literally as, his dais, his podium, and his microphone. And, he's communicated to the world, vis-a-vis New York and the midheaven and his Mercury there. And his Venus and Saturn in the 10th house is actually pretty advantageous, I think, for Trump, even though the south node of New York may not be all that receptive to him on a personal level. Okay? Doesn't mean that he can't benefit from it. Clearly he has. But I also think that the south node represents a vulnerability, a weakness, and in Cancer, it's very moody. It's very up and down. So sometimes they can be in love with him, and then sometimes they can be. It's very, very Cancerian in that way, right? The other thing that I thought was interesting is Trump's Sun and True Node right on New York's part of fortune. Bang, right there. Right there. In 9th house, it is a gateway to the world for him. Of course, he married 2 women from other countries with Melania and Ivana. Very, very 9th house. And I would say, in a lot of ways, it would be the people from other countries who either were connected to Trump in New York or were from other countries in New York who might have been Trump's biggest assets and biggest allies. But, again, he's got, Pluto and Gemini. New York's got Pluto and Gemini. That's resources. And, his sun is literally, ascending here. So New York was a place where he ascended, right, based on this chart. So we have fortune. That's fortune. We have ascent. We have the sort of the microphone to the world, enduring, long-standing, but not really well liked with the south node there. And Venus, Saturn opposing Mercury down here. And I think that, Trump doesn't come from blue blood money. And I've talked about this before. He doesn't come from, he is not a blue blood, although I know that Eileen has looked into some of his bloodlines, and clearly there's some interesting bloodline stuff there. But if you go back prior to his dad, Fred, it's not, you don't get a sense that these are people that are swimming in startup money. Okay. They're not swimming in startup money. So Trump, in a lot of ways, is kind of an outsider to a place like New York. And I think that's why, in many regards, that he has gravitated and really bonded with Jews, because Jewish people have a sense of being outsiders, that they are the rootless cosmopolitans. So, and he did a lot of business with Jewish real estate interests. And I've talked about this before, because this is who Trump bonds with. Trump is not bonding with blue bloods. Trump is not bonding with the Van Dynes, or, not bonding with the Van Burens, right? That's not the world Trump moves in. Trump moves in the world of the Roy Cohens, the Michael Cohens, the Jared Kushners. This is sort of the, these, and again, right? Look at where the sun is. Here it's in the 9th house. Trump probably he's probably more well-liked in Tel Aviv than he is New York. So again, this is an interesting relationship he has with the city, because he comes from a different kind of trajectory. He doesn't come from sort of that Rockefeller world. That's not where Donald Trump really comes from. And so what does he do? He bonds with people who also don't come from that world as well. Look who's around him. Look who surrounds him in the White House. Mnuchin, Wilbur Ross, Jared Kushner. The list goes on and on and on, right? It makes sense to me, at least from an astrological perspective. And it's just in terms of his life in general. We have Trump's moon, eclipse moon, right down here. And that happens to be also in his, let's see, he's got it in the 4th house and it's in New York's third house. So one of the things that we've seen with New York's chart is the South Node getting ready to come in, and that'll be next year. That'll be after the election. I think Trump is, I think it's a tricky time for Trump during that phase. I do think if we have an election, big if we have an election, I think he will win. I don't think Joe Biden's going to win. I don't think Joe Biden's meant to win. I don't think Americans will accept, even though they want to destroy these cities and, have the reset. I don't think Americans are really ready to embrace like the AOC version of communism and socialism. No. And when you do a deal with the devil can't force you to take the deal, right? The devil can't force you to take the deal. In order for the devil to get the devil's due, you have to agree with the devil. You do. You absolutely do. It's about consent or not consent. If you don't consent, you're not doing a handshake with the devil. If you consent, guess what? You do. So they may make conditions really, really difficult, so that you ultimately have to consent, or they may make conditions really, really ideal. And consent would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? And I feel like that's kind of where we're headed. I feel like a lot of what we're experiencing is the problem, reaction, solution. And we are in the reaction phase. Trump was designated the problem. We have chaos, and he is an agent of chaos with the true node, Sun, Uranus, and Gemini. We know he brings chaos to the table. I don't have a problem with chaos. And by the way, I still think the guy's pretty brilliant. I know a lot of people think he's a moron. I don't think he's a moron at all. I actually think he's pretty brilliant. But he is an agent of chaos. So when we have chaos, we have, ordo ab chao, out of order chaos. And this gets into the discussion that I have with Emily over on her channel, the Matrix Mash channel, or the channel that has the Matrix Mash, Emily's channel. We talked about this with the Weinsteins, Dark Horse, and Unity. I still believe they are the solution. They are the solution to the chaos. They are going to have Americans basically signing that dotted line. Signing it down. Yeah, we'll accept this. Sounds great. That's how you do the deal. You don't do the deal by shoving AOC and Prince and Liz Warren. You don't do the deal that way. Americans will push back on that. They will push back on that. You do the deal covertly. That's what happens. Covertly. Say, oh yeah, sounds great. I'm all in. Sounds great. Give me that UBI. Give me that UBI and pass the bong. Okay. So I have another city here. And I've been wanting to do this one for a while. And this is, and I want to show you the power of relocation. This is the power of relocation. And in this case, we're not really talking about relocation, but just location. All right, here we go. So we have Seattle. We have Bill Gates. Right? So Seattle's on the inside. Right there. Seattle's on the inside. And guess what we got going on with Seattle? Well, in the fourth house, we have Uranus right there in the fourth house. And Uranus is getting ready to be a wrecking ball. Uranus conjunct Saturn, Uranus conjunct Pluto, Uranus conjunction. Boy, oh boy. So Pluto, New York's in Pluto and Saturn. I think Seattle's going to have a big fucking earthquake. That's what I think. What are the degrees here? Let me just zoom in on this. Okay, so Seattle has where's their Uranus? Pluto's at 29 Aries. Okay, where's that fourth house? Right there. Okay. So the IC is going to be what? What do we got? 4th, 10th, 12th, 9th, 4th. MC's at 17. Well, 4 Scorpio. So Uranus is right here. Uranus is already in Seattle's 4th house. So Seattle comes in right here, right at the Great Reset. Right at the Great Reset. This is the time. 1851, 1852, and we can see where we have Uranus and Taurus. You see that? Right there. And then I think a year later or later that year, what is this, November? Yeah, it's November. So later that year, Pluto goes into Taurus. And I've talked about this before. And we have Neptune in Pisces, Uranus in Taurus. And what was the other thing? It was Saturn in Aries. That's interesting. So if we go back, where are we now? We got Saturn in Capricorn. There was one other aspect. What was it? Might have been Pisces. Might have been Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. But that's not until 20. Well, we'll get to Saturn Pisces 2025. But these are the two. What was the other one? Come on, help me out here. What was it? It was it was a true node. True node. It was a true node in Cancer, and then Neptune in Pisces, and then Uranus in Taurus. And this is when I started to talk about the reset. And it was those three aspects that really started to get my head wrapped around Tartaria, that reset, and kind of where we are now. Okay. But Seattle, you got Uranus in your fourth house, and that is turmoil. Isn't that just like so Chaz? Uranus in the fourth house, the autonomous zone. That is so Chaz. Remember the good old days of Chaz? Remember the halcyon days of Chaz? Anyway. So yeah, I think you're going to have an earthquake. That's my sense. Where's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Uranus opposing your sun. That's what I think. All right, where's your sun? 20 degrees. A little bit of ways out. What are we talking about? Like end of next year? Yeah. It's coming. It's coming. It is coming. It is coming. But it is radical. Look, you got Uranus going through your fourth house. Disturbing, destructive, radical. All right, let's get into Mr. Bill Gates. So Gates's chart is on the outside. You see that? See that? Okay, so Bill Gates is a Scorpio, and his sun is right on Seattle's midheaven. You see that? See how it works? Right? That takes care of his shitty ass little sun in the fourth house. Oh, by the way, I'm not condemning a fourth house sun. Please. I'm just condemning it for Bill Gates. That's all. So the sun is on the midheaven. Look at that. This is like if I was advising Bill Gates to move somewhere, you know what, Bill, you got to get out of Des Moines. I think Seattle would be great for you. I really do. So there's the sun on the midheaven. Guess what it's doing? Conjuncting Jupiter. Largesse. Power, money. I'm hearing some coyotes tonight. You might be able to hear them. All right, here we go. Now we got Saturn-Venus, his Saturn-Venus, conjunct the sun and Mercury. Well, he's tapping in. It's interesting because both Trump and Bill Gates both have their Saturn-Venus in their respective cities. That's interesting. That is an interesting development here. And it's tapped right into Seattle's, in some ways, Seattle's soul. Right? Seattle's soul. Bill Gates owns you, Seattle. But again, let's look at the money situation. He's got that damn Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in Leo, right? Conjunct Regulus. It's like this motherfucker, he's got money. It's in the chart. We can see it. And what's it doing? Conjuncting Seattle's part of fortune. What was Trump's sun, Uranus, doing? Conjuncting New York's part of fortune. Very interesting. A tale of two people and a tale of two cities, and not so dissimilar in some ways. Now, with Trump, it was the ninth house, Bill Gates' eighth house, other people's money. Other people's money. He's making a shit ton of money through Seattle. It's all up here. All up here. And here's what's really interesting, too. He's got that true node, and it's in Sagittarius. And it's in the 12th house here. And there is a Chiron conjunction, right? You got that Chiron conjunction. And I think that that's like spycraft. That's 12th housey shit. That's very 12th housey. So there's something going on here with Bill Gates in Seattle that clearly is not above board and deals with other countries, obviously, because that's what Sagittarius represents. So let's see, anything else remarkable or unremarkable? I think really this is it. This is where, the steak has the sizzle right there. Sun in the midheaven, Jupiter, Pluto tapping into the part of fortune, other people's money, finances, resources. Here's Jupiter, Pluto in trine, Saturn, Uranus. This is computers. This is computers right here. This is Microsoft right there. Right there. So it's a perfect setup. You get to the right place and you can grow where you're planted. Is there anything here that is detrimental or deleterious? I don't know. I mean, I think that Jupiter Pluto square to Seattle Sun, Mercury, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a bad square per se. I'm not sure if it is, especially when his sun is right on top of the chart and dominating the chart. He probably owns the damn city. And Bezos is a Capricorn. And that's interesting because Bezos would be all over Seattle's ascendant right there. Right there. So who owns Seattle? Is it Bill Gates with his sun on the midheaven, or Jeff Bezos with his sun near Seattle's ascendant? Interesting question. But hey, this is where you can see this is location. This isn't even relocation. But if he were to relocate to Seattle, this would be a very successful chart. It doesn't get much more successful with sun on top of the midheaven. And that's why when you do a relocated chart, you want to look at the chart of the damn city. You want to find out what's going on there. All right, let me check in with you guys, see where you're at. Could be China, maybe. China's got a lot of Libra. China's a Libra sun, Aquarius rising. Canada has given China troop authority to protect their mineral holdings. Sarah Westall says Chinese troops are in place of British Columbia. It doesn't surprise me. They've seen, I think they've seen Chinese troops down at the border in San Diego. That's what I've heard. I think they have Chinese nationals near the border in San Diego. I've heard the Chinese might be controlling the border in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. You guys probably know that. Guess who's going to end up owning NY? Well, that's a really interesting statement because there's so much Jewish power and influence in New York City. And will they allow China to run New York City? I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe China will be Tel Aviv's proxy, possibly, right? All right, let's see what else we got here. Anything else? 12th house is going serious PMS right now. All right, let's see what else. Night, Rita. Who's saying good night? Chris and Steve? They saying good night, Chris and Steve. Night. There you go. All right. Going to bed early, sort of early. Yes, the Crimmies work very hard in their garden today. Very hard. Gates loves on Medina. Let's see, anything else we got there? Again, the Chinese-Israel connection. Yeah. All right. 247 people. Let's go over some rising signs. I've been wanting to go over this for a while now. You guys were really, really, I think, very receptive. Very, very receptive to my sun sign analysis. Easiest to most difficult. Where are we? Well, it's not in there. Where the hell did it go? Oh, I know what happened. I know what happened. All right. Yeah. I only did it for the top. I thought I did it for the top 12 rising signs. Okay. Do I want to do this just kind of off the top of my head? I had this thing all laid out. I had it all laid out. All right. I'm just going to do this top of my head. And I'm not going to break it down like super exclusively. I mean, I'll break some shit down, but I'm going to wing it because I had it all numerically synchronized. Okay. So here we go. I think that the number one rising sign, and remember, this is about easiest to most difficult. Easiest to most difficult. I believe the easiest rising sign is this, Sagittarius. Why? Because it's, the outlook is sunny, it's positive, optimistic, right? Good sense of humor. The cup is always half full versus half empty. On the downside, a little lazy. I will say a little lazy. And then if you have Sagittarius on the ascendant, what do you have on the 7th house? You have Gemini. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic because when we talk about the ascendant here, we're also talking about what's on the other side of the ascendant. So what is Sagittarius bonding with or not bonding with for that matter? Gemini is a mutable sign. And there's either one or the other, one or the other, one or the other. And I think Sag, both in the sun and the ascendant, are kind of hard to rein in when it comes to commitment. But I'd say by and large, this is probably the best rising sign. Again, philosophical, fun-loving, lands on its feet, generally popular, generally lucky because of a positive outlook, a little on the lazy side, can be somewhat self-indulgent. Got to watch the diet, right? Ruled by Jupiter. A lot of beer, a lot of carbs will make you look like Jim Morrison, circa 1970. Sagittarian Jim Morrison. Oh boy, did he get expansive. Okay, but I would think it's probably the best rising sign. That's my sense. Sagittarius, gotta love it, on the ascendant. Leo, 9th house, great for travel, kind of cruising around, finding love in distant places with, exotic faces. There you go. There's Sag right there. That's number one. Okay. All right. I would say really rising from the depths of our last top 12 is Aries on the ascendant. Why? The chart is set perfectly. You've got Aries on the ascendant, Cancer in the 4th house, Libra in the 7th house, Capricorn on the midheaven. I mean, just chronologically, it's a good fit, right? It's a very good fit. If you have Aries on the ascendant, you're here to, guess what? You're to pioneer. You're here to figure out how your persona evolves through the application of will. You've got Libra on the other side of the chart. You get to learn about compromise, right? You get to learn about how to bond people in relationship. It's a nice place to have the 7th house cusp. You could have, theoretically a decent home, with Cancerian values. So it's really just about the symmetry of the chart. And Aries rising people tend to be pretty self-directed. It can be a problem if Chiron is there. If you have Mars in Aries, it could be a problem because you may have too much Aries. You have too much Mars. So there could be some drawbacks. Nobody's going to have Neptune in Aries. Well, they will, but not now. Saturn in Aries can be difficult in the 1st house. If we're really just, I'm just looking at kind of an unadulterated, hermetically sealed rising sign. Saturn in Aries can be problematic in the 1st because you want to assert your will. And guess what? From a very early age, your father is saying, no, you can't do that. And then that winds up becoming, the father, the teacher, the principal, the boss. But if you play your cards right, and you keep moving ahead, then eventually you will master Saturn and your will be indomitable. I would say that's number 2. Okay. All right. Number 3, just throwing it out there. Again, it was high on the top 10, top 12, easiest to hardest signs. I'm going number 3, Libra. Again, you get the easy sign. Now, the thing with Libra is that now the clock is set backwards. On the 7th house cusp, you have Aries. Down at the bottom of the chart, you have Capricorn. At the top of the chart, you have Cancer. Everything's off, right? Everything's 180'd. And that can be a bit tricky because your home life might be a little austere with Capricorn there. Your relationship life or your partnerships could be dominated by domination. But I've seen people for Libra rising, as soon as they are out of a relationship, man, they are in a new relationship. They waste no fucking time. No time. It's like, okay, I'm going here now. I'm kicking that Aries in, right? I've seen that a lot. And Libra rising, guess what? Many cases, that's not a hard thing to do. That's like, Libra rising, little honey to the fly. The midheaven in Cancer can be a little challenging, unless you're kind of doing some Cancerian kind of work that is, kind of matched up with Libra. Libra is very big in it's aesthetics, design. So if you're doing aesthetics design with Cancer to midheaven, within the home decor, things like that, that could be a really good fit. Anything having to do with like, higher aesthetic values with culinary could be really, really good. Hotel work, but really high-end hotels could be really, really good with that Cancerian midheaven. But a lot of that stuff now, we're headed into a time of austerity. I'll talk about that before the end of the show. Both Libra men and women tend to be attractive with Libra on the ascendant. Even when they're not attractive, theoretically, by society standards, they have a certain something about them, a little sparkle, a little grace. They tend to wear their clothes quite well. Libra women on the ascendant, always attractive, always charming. Same with the men, but I think Libra men have a harder time, again, on the ascendant. I think Aries women have a bit of a harder. I'm not getting into the Aries women thing. I'm gonna leave that alone. But I think Libra men have a more difficult time on the ascendant, and I've seen this because they're not assertive. They learn how to get by with charm and grace, and I've got a friend who lives in. He's a great guy, great young guy. He's a Libra rising, Saturn on the ascendant, Sun in the 12th house in Libra, and he just can't get out of his kind of Libra mindset. And he's like Hamlet in a lot of ways. And I love this guy. He's a great guy. He's a totally great guy. But he calls me every now and then, and he's like, "Oh man, Robert, I'm doing this and that, and geez, is this going on?" And I said, "Look," and I've had him as a client, and he wanted to continue to work with me, and I said no. I'm friends with him. I try to help him when I can, or listen to him or whatever, provide whatever I can. But it's like, no, I'm not going to work with you anymore because you can go and you could try all these different systems, but you're not going to solve it with your head. You will not outthink your condition. The only way you're going to get through your condition is by getting out of your head, right? And that's what Libra on the ascendant will do, and especially with men. They're kind of mental, they're kind of balancing. And he's a great sales guy. He's, very kind, and he's got that Libra rising vibe. They got the codes. Libra rising's got the codes. Yes, please. Thank you. Excuse me. I apologize. Right. And then once they do that, see, and you find this in my course. If you've taken my course, you know this. Because when you are young, your rising sign is how you learn how to survive through the world. That's how you develop your rising sign, and you figure things out quickly. You're a little person, 2 years old, 3 years old. There's a big world. You got to deal with a big fucking world. You got to figure out how you're going to get your way. And so by tapping into your rising sign, either consciously or unconsciously, you figure out that you get things. So Libra on the rising sign is, well, if I say, thank you, please, and yes, sir, and no, sir, no, ma'am, and excuse me, guess what happens? Doors open for me. Oh, I got this shit wired. I just got to be nice and polite, and and it happens. And I can go through a little of this with every rise sign, a little bit. If you get my course, it's all in there. By the way, a very undervalued course, if I have to say so myself. All right, that's number 3. Let's go to number 4. All right, I'm going to go right down the list here. I guess this is the ones that, oh yeah. Okay, okay, here we go. I think this is the number 4 rising sign right here. Right here. I think, let me just get this right. I'm going to surprise you. Believe it or not, I think Virgo is really up there for rising signs. I think it's higher on the ascendant than it is the sun. I move it way up. And I'll tell you why. Because people with Virgo rising tend to have their shit together. They pay attention to details. They're organized. They generally have a pretty good handle on their health, although sometimes it can be a bit obsessive. The downside with Virgo rising, it can be a little neurotic. Let's say that I was involved with a long-term relationship with somebody in my past who was a Virgo rising, they were germaphobe. They were germaphobe. And one of their favorite books was, they had these books called Worst Case Scenario. So, we went camping one time and she bought one of these worst case scenario books to take with us when we were camping. That, boys and girls, is Virgo fucking rising. On the plus side, it has its shit together. It's organized. Correct? We have, generally speaking, Taurus on that midheaven, good for building. Chaos in the 7th house with Pisces is a bit of a downside. That's why Virgo rising has its shit together, because it's dealing with the chaos of Pisces on the descendants. And then what do we have in the 4th house? I think we have a little Scorpio action in the 4th house. That could be a little intense. But again, this is getting by and getting through in the world. Virgo rising is a great everyday sign. It's a great everyday sign on the ascendant. I think it's very underrated. Very, very, both men and women. And if you're Virgo rising, you never leave your house unless you look exactly correct. You know what I'm talking about. Not a hair undone. You want everything all together so that you can deal with the chaos of the day ahead of you. A very underrated rising sign. Super underrated. And there's the service aspect too, on some level. Right? So when a Virgo rising person feels good about themselves, then they can be of service to other people. Very underrated rising sign. Okay. Where am I going next? I like Taurus on the ascendant. Again, high marks for being in the world. Can be a bit lazy. Look, I'll tell you, I do not get a lot of Taurus rising people for readings. I don't. And I keep track. The most signs, or let me say this, the signs that come to me the most on the ascendant: Cancer, always. Gemini, I'd say second. Lately it's been Sag. Getting a lot of Sag sun signs lately. Cancer, Gemini. Lately Sag. Let's see. I get a lot of Capricorn rising. A lot of Capricorn rising readings, because Capricorns have been having a tough time with their 12 houses. But rarely, there are two signs that I don't get a lot of readings for on the ascendant. It's Taurus and Pisces. And occasionally Aries. I'm getting more Aries now. But Taurus, I don't often see. You know why? Because I think Taurus rising or Taurus ascending people kind of know who they are. It's like, I know who I am. I'm here. I'm solid. Let me look in the mirror and, oh, yeah, I'm beautiful, aren't I? It's a sign that, and when it's really, on, it's great. And there really are two types of kind of Taurus expressions. With men on the ascendant, you get the Adonis effect. These are strong people. Women ruled by Venus, beauty, stature, again, a form of grace. But there's the other side of Taurus, which is really earthy and really, utilitarian and stocky. So you can kind of get both sides on the ascendant. And, how Taurus figures out that as long as they can get things that give them a sense of comfort and beauty and feel safe, they're good, man. They're good. And they learn how to acquire things at a young age. That's how Taurus rising works. And they don't really cause a lot of fuss, I think, on the ascendant. It's not a controversial, in your face kind of rising sign. Unless, of course, you ask them to do something that they don't want to do, and forget that. Forget that. I will also say that as a sign, it is one of the more self-involved signs, both with the sun and on the ascendant. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a spring sign. It doesn't have the same kind of, Hamlet-like effect that Libra's got going on. It doesn't have the same kind of trajectory into the void that Scorpio has, but it's good for daily living, right? It's a good daily living sign. And on the ascendant, I think it's a very manageable, very peaceful, very pleasant ascendant. A lot of Taurus ascending people just kind of know who they are. So I'm moving Taurus up there. Okay. All right. What else do we have? I'm going to give you another ascendant that I think you'll be a little shocked with. And put it right after. Again, I actually think Pisces is a good rising sign. I know you think, what the fuck is he talking about? I think a Pisces ascendant is easier than a Pisces sun. Absolutely. You know why? With Pisces ascendant, it's like, let me worry. Pisces ascending wants to move and just flow. Every now and then you can be sort of the scapegoat. You can be the, you can be crucified. Shit can be blamed on you. But I've also seen Pisces rising people just really not give a fuck in kind of a good way. They're just, they're kind of in their bubble. When Pisces rising is on, they're in their bubble and they are just kind of blissed out and they just want to dissolve with the world. And when they're writing on, they can do that. They can just become part of the environment. Now, they may get a little confused at times, and I would say probably the best thing if you're Pisces rising, stay away from any kind of substance. Try to live a pretty clean life. But if you can figure out how to go with the flow in your life as a Pisces rising, you can really go into some interesting places. And learning how to surrender. The expression of essence is the art of non-doing with Pisces on the ascendant. And what do we have with the bottom of the chart? Well, we have we have Virgo on the south on the descendant, and then after that, what do we have? We've got let's see, we have Gemini. We have Gemini down at the bottom of the chart and Sag at the top, right? Is that right? No, other way, Sag and then Gemini. Yeah, I know Virgo, no, Sag at the top. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I think it's good. I think it's a good rising sign. I think it's underrated, very underrated. And Pisces rising people have those beautiful blue eyes. Or if they're not blue, they're watery. And there's a lot of creativity and artistry. So if they can figure out the operating system, kind of go with the flow, keep themselves clean, right? And when I say clean, I'm talking about so it'd be Gemini, Virgo, and Sag at the top. Exactly. Yeah. When I say clean, I'm talking about with substances. If Pisces rising can live a pretty pure life, I think it's a pretty enlightened ascendant. And when a Pisces rising is young, they're dreamy. They're really, really dreamy. They're daydreamers in school. They tend to be sweet. And, people will kind of, in some cases leave them alone. Maybe every now and then they'll get the bully pulpit, right? But I think it's an underrated rising sign because really they don't give a fuck. And I certainly don't get many. So maybe all the Pisces rising are in jail. No, that's not true. I think it's an underrated rising sign. So all you Pisces people out there you go. That's for you. What do we have left here? I think I'm going with Gemini next, right behind Pisces. Now I love Gemini on the ascendant. I get a lot of Gemini rising clients. Curious as all get out, man. Curious all the time. Gemini rising people, they will look young. Gemini rising, Virgo rising, Libra rising, all three of those signs will retain their youth. Now, Capricorn rising, which I haven't gotten into yet, starts off looking older when they're young, but by the time they get older, they're looking younger. But Gemini, Virgo, and Libra tend to retain their youth for most of their life. And Gemini, out of the three by far, I would say the most. Very inquisitive, very curious. Life of the party, right? The challenge with Gemini rising is that both the air signs, Gemini and Libra, can be a bit dilettantish on the ascendant, right? So a lot of times Libra on the ascendant will think, well, man, I'm really artistic and I'm really creative. And they may have a little bit of that, but they may kind of oversell their artistry or their creativity. Gemini on the ascendant is a little bit dilettantish too, in that they're always learning things. Like I think on the ascendant, it's like they're always going to like, this workshop or that seminar or that workshop. And you'll find Gemini rising people have a ton of certifications. Like they'll be certified in this and that and this and that and this and that. But it's like, well, what are you doing with it? Well, I'm trying to figure out how to put it all together. That is the downside of Gemini rising. It's like they know a lot of stuff. They know how to do a lot of things, but they don't always correlate it. They don't always put it together. That's not what happens. And with Pisces on the midheaven, that can be a bit tricky again, right? But I think it's not a bad rising sign. I'd probably put Pisces and Gemini like pretty close, like almost 1A, 1B. Okay. What do we got next? All right. Now we're getting into the rising signs I think are really difficult. I think we're getting into the rising signs that are difficult. And I'm going to say that, where am I going to go with this one? Okay. I think as we get down to the bottom ones, I think Scorpio. Nah, I'm going to take that back. I got to rank somebody higher. I'm going to go just a little bit higher than Scorpio. Aquarius. Now, Aquarius on the ascendant, again, you're going to get that air effect, cool, breezy, friendly, at times, popular, but quirky. Very quirky on the ascendant. Eccentric. Not bad. I like quirky. I like eccentric. I have seen with a number of Aquarius rising people, since it's ruled by Uranus, their life at times is not their own. Right? With the outer planets, you can even say a little bit about this with Pisces too, with Neptune as a ruler. I've seen people who are Aquarius rising with their lives going through life quakes because Uranus is the ruler. And usually it happens when they're doing the wrong thing. Not if they're doing like something wrong and they've been caught red-handed. When I say doing the wrong thing, like they're involved in the wrong occupation or, they're maybe the wrong relationship. But I've seen this on a number of occasions with Aquarius rising people. That lightning bolt to Uranus will come in and go wham. And just the one, it's probably unfair because he also said Saturn on the ascendant. But I used to be close friends with this guy who, anytime I wanted to bring up the Uranian effect of Aquarius on the ascendant, I got a list of examples like that long. I'll just pick one. So one time, I'll pick two. So one time, he lived in this grandmother apartment underneath this house in it was San Carlos, California. Nice house, very nice house. And the grandmother apartment was kind of just below the house and was parallel with a deck and the cement pond, also known as the pool. So to get to his little apartment, you go through the side door, right, the gate. You kind of walk on the deck, pool on the right. Open his door into his little grandmother unit. So one day he comes home, opens his gate, walks down the side of the pool, and he looks over and he sees something in the pool, and he realizes it's a body, and it's face down, and it happens to be the woman who owns the house. She lived upstairs and was the landlord, and it's like, oh, I guess I have to move now, right? I'm sorry. That's some Uranus on the ascendant shit right there. It's just like, and then, so there was another time he hated his job. Very smart guy, very, very talented guy. Hated his job. And he was a limo driver, but he hated it. And he was trying to, work on like business deals and stuff. And he met a lot of people driving the limo. And he met some pretty well-known people. He told me a few stories. Anyway, he hated that job. So he's driving the limo back to the garage, and it's rainy, and it's a little kind of slippery out, and all of a sudden this woman just slides over from the other lane, hits him, and the limo flips over, and he's hanging upside down from the seatbelt. So when the fire department comes, they've got to go and basically uncut the seatbelt and then get him out. So needless to say, he was no longer a limo driver, and he got disability, and he got some money, and, kind of led him onto a new path for a while. But I swear, those are just two examples. I've got about 4 or 5 of this guy. And not everybody's going to be that drastic with Aquarius on the ascendant, but you got to understand, like, that's part of the deal. And you can be shocking at times to other people as well with Aquarius on the ascendant. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of figure out who you are and assert your individuality in some ways. But at the same time, you're also trying to fit into this kind of larger context of the group. So it's not an easy sign in that regard. It might be a little bit more easy on the ascendant than with the sun. But again, ruled by Uranus, you always have to kind of watch out for that crazy Uranian shit to happen to you in your life. Now, if you're living kind of more Uranian, then that stuff has less of a chance to happen to you. And I firmly believe that. So, Uranus, if you have Uranus transiting your first house, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, here we go. We're winding down now. I'm going to go with, right after Aquarius, I'm going with Scorpio on the ascendant. Now, personally, I like Scorpio rising. It's not an easy ascendant, though. I'll be honest with you. It's not easy. But if you master Scorpio, man, it is. I'm telling you, if you master it, it's a kick-ass rising sign. But in order to get there, you got to go through a lot of shit. You got to go through a lot of transformation. So a lot of times people are Scorpio rising. They're Scorpio rising for a reason, because they deal with intensity, right? There's intensity. Like Scorpio rising people, they get that stinger for a reason. It's not just because they're Scorpio rising. A lot of Scorpio rising have been through shit. They've had to deal with intensity. I grew up as a Scorpio rising, and let me tell you, man, it was intense. I had a time bomb father. I didn't know who was walking through that door at times. So it's like, get the radar up. Who's walking in? I got to read that mood real fast, right? Real fast. It's called hyperattenuation, because you got to figure out where the danger is coming from. So what happens? You apply that in everyday life. Where's the danger? Where's the threat? So as a result, Scorpio rising people get really good at reading people. Hey, part of the business, part of the game, right? So after a while, it's not hard for me to zoom in really quickly on people, really quickly. I've been doing this for a long time. And you can master that, right? The other thing with Scorpio rising, people either really like you or they'll really hate you, right? They're really into you or they're really not. And you find out real fast, like, kind of who's on your side. And the challenging thing with Scorpio rising is that, the best defense is a good offense. And so a Scorpio rising person will attack. They'll be on the offensive before they get hurt. They'll usually break up with you before you break up with them. They'll usually bring the pain versus have the pain brought to them, although that does happen. That's the nature of Scorpio rising. It's a very magnetic sign on the ascendant. It could also be very repellent. People are either into it or not into it. And unlike the Scorpio sun sign, and you see this with people who are Scorpio suns, their eyes tend to be kind of slitty, right? They have that kind of slitty eye on the with the sun sign. With the rising sign, it's different. Scorpio rising sign people have very penetrating eyes. Like they'll look right through you, right? But once you understand and get the operating manual for Scorpio rising, after you go through some transformations, I think it's a good rising sign. But until you get it, it can be very, very difficult, particularly with what you have to go through as a kid to figure out how to navigate through the world. Who's the friend? Who's the foe? Right? And then once you sort that out and can reverse this process, Scorpio rising can be a very, very powerful influence on in the environment around them. Very powerful influence. So, I have it low because of the sort of the life factor. But once you get through it and get to the other side, I think it really elevates itself much higher on the rising side of things. Okay, so I'm going to put, and these two are tough for me, but I'm going to go, I know you Cancer people think I have it out for you. I just think Cancer is a tough sign. I think it's a tough sign. It's a great sign. I love it. It's soulful. You know what I said about Cancer as a sun sign on the ascendant. It's a little bit different, but you've got even more sensitivity. And again, when you're dealing with these, the cardinal aspects or the cardinal points, Cancer on the ascendant is, that's the house of Mars, right? You got Cancer there, which can be passive, it can be aggressive, it can be moody. The key with Cancer on the ascendant is you got to know, you have to understand your cycles. You have to if you can understand your cycles, like, there's a famous line from Modern Love by David Bowie, which I've always attributed to Cancer rising. It's right at the beginning of the song. I know when to go out. I know when to stay in, get things done. That, if you're Cancer rising, that should be your mantra. I know when to go out. I know when to stay in, get things done. That's it. You figure that out, you solved your rising sign. I mean, it sounds simplistic, but it's true. It's about understanding. If you are not feeling up to snuff, you don't want to go outside, don't fucking force it. You know why? Because you'll be a crabby ass. That's why. Just stay home, stay in, recharge, get what you need. And then when you're ready, then go out. Right? And when Cancer rising is right on the ascendant, man, they're great to be around. They're warm, they're convivial, they're nurturing, they give great hugs. Fantastic. When everything is flowing and moving in the right direction, fantastic. But when it's not, then it gets a little tricky, right? The worst thing is for Cancer rising person to be out and about or doing things and they're tired or they're hungry or they're haven't resolved something emotionally. And now they're having to interact with people, and, you get that kind of bitterness and, they're not fully engaged. And, it's like, if you understand your right, if you can get the rising sign and understand your rising sign, you've got about a quarter of your chart down. I'm telling you, you got a quarter of your operating system down, and it takes time sometimes with the ascendant. It takes time with the rising sign. So I get a lot of Cancer rising people as clients. I don't mind it at all. Not at all. I think it's, they're very receptive. And that's the cool thing about Cancer rising is that when the receptivity is there, boy, they're really open. They're like, hey, I'm here for reading. I'm receptive. Okay, well, here you go. Let's talk. Let's break it down. Because there's already some sort of pre-qualification. They've already consented to be in that atmosphere, in that environment. So they're really good clients. I find Gemini rising and Cancer rising be great clients. And because they want to know, they want to understand, more about kind of who they are in some ways, or, untangle certain things. Again, I'm going to go with, for a woman, it's easier to be Cancer rising than it is for a male. Because if you're a woman, you're Cancer rising, you could really move that energy. When you kind of feel it, you really feel it. You just like, cue up Helen Reddy, I am woman, right? I mean, that's kind of the Cancer rising vibe, Cancer rising sign. And, with engage with sort of the feminine aspect with being a woman. You can really be in your power with Cancer rising. You're a man, it's a little bit different, it's a bit different. It's not impossible, but you're dealing with feminine energy. It'd be great energy if you're a chef, or if you're like a male nurse, or you want to take care of things. And Cancer men I think they're very good to have around. Like if you have a cancer guy as a mate or a life partner, and they know how to turn a wrench, they're like invaluable. They're good listeners. They can be really devoted. So don't undersell a Cancer rising man or cancer male. I think I think they can be really, really solid in terms of life partners. Really solid, especially when they know who they are. When they know who they are, I have there's a couple in Melbourne, and they show up here in chat every now and then. And the husband is a Cancer, and he's just got that really solid Cancerian vibe. And it can happen on the ascendant too. Just know what your cycles are. Get sleep. Cancer rising needs good sleep. They need good water. They need a good diet. It's about nurturing. With Cancer on the ascendant, nurture yourself. Nurture yourself. Okay, now I had this one a little bit low, I think. Maybe it could have been higher. But I think Leo rising is difficult in times. And I'll tell you why. Number one, you got Aquarius on the 7th house cusp, which means that you've got this fixed sign on the ascendant, and you want things to be, solid and loving and romantic. But then you got Aquarius hanging out there. And I've known a lot of Leo rising people, and they've had some kooky ass relationships. Really kooky, and they don't fit into a box. They just don't fit into a box. So, as Cancer learns about self-care, Leo learns about self-love on the ascendant. You're a Leo rising, you better have that long hair. I'm telling you. It is not a joke. You've got to have that long hair. If you don't have long hair, you definitely need to have a unique style and a unique look. I think it could be a bit of a challenging rising sign, though, especially with Aquarius on the ascendant. On the descendant. The other thing that's challenging with Leo rising, it's not always the case, but Leo rising can grow up to be the golden child, right? It's like, I'm going to perform, I'm going to perform. Look at me. I'm going to do the little skits. I'm going to do the little plays. Oh, isn't she talented? Oh, isn't he funny? Right? And they get used to that. And that's how they, again, you're a little person. How do you get by? How do you get through? I'm a Leo rising. I'll perform. And that's what they do. And so they get this kind of golden child status. And, that's cool for a while. But when the golden child has to go into, like college or something like that, or even the latter years of high school, guess what happens? That golden child status can get shattered really quickly. When the golden child realizes that out in the big wide world, they're not as golden as some other children, that could be really, really tricky. Really tricky. Because now they're like, Jesus Christ, I thought it was all that. I thought it was all that in a bag of chips. Well, a lot of other people. So what'll happen then? Well, in some cases, Leo rising can turn really egotistical if they have that kind of, I'm not the golden child experience anymore. And it can take them a while to kind of work through that and try to find some balance between being the golden child and then realizing that maybe they're just not as special in some ways as everybody kind of, supported them with. And then that's when the ego gets broken down. And then they have to build the ego back up again, but in a different kind of way, in a way that's more based on true heart versus, being Shirley Temple, right? Or trying to be. So in that regard, I think it could be a difficult rising sign. You've got the crash from being the golden child. You got to deal with Aquarius on the descendant and erratic, eccentric, at times kooky relationships. But once you get that together and learn self-possession, self-respect, some creativity, then Leo can really be quite warm and loving and attentive on the rising sign, on the ascendant. And again, I'm just giving you kind of big chunks and blocks of information. There's a lot more to a chart. than just the rising sign. But I'm giving you these pithy snapshots. Okay, so who's left? It's Capricorn. I think Capricorn might be the most difficult ascendant in some ways. And the reason why I think it's difficult is because you don't get much of a childhood as a Capricorn rising. It's like you're born old. You know, you're born old, or you're born into a sense of duty or responsibility. Generally speaking, Capricorn rising people figure out that if they can achieve something, theoretically, they'll get some kind of, they'll get some kind of reward. Like, well, if I'm the class president, I'll get loved. That doesn't always happen. But Capricorn rising will set those goals because, theoretically, that could be an unspoken agreement with the parents or with the family. Well, this is what the family did, or this is what we expect of you, right? So Capricorn rising will do these things with the expectation if they do that, they'll get loved. But it doesn't always happen because they're ruled by Saturn. And so they keep doing these things, and they're not necessarily getting, the warm and fuzzies that, little Miss Leo gets. It could be a challenging rising sign. And what happens is it's setting itself up to be responsible. So these things can be very useful later on in life. And later on in life, I think Capricorn rising is probably the best ascendant because, they've done all the work. They've done all the kind of hard work. They've been responsible. And, they can kind of coast at a certain point in time. They tend to look younger as they get older. They tend to lighten up. They tend to not be as dialed into some relationship with authority or hierarchies in order to sort of support them and improve their status, right? Sometimes Capricorn rising young people also wind up playing the role of a parent in a family. They're kind of drafted into that role. Sometimes if there's a split between a mother and the father, if you're Capricorn rising, you could move into that position where you're playing, the surrogate mom or the surrogate dad if you're one of the older siblings. I think it's a difficult rising sign. It's not always fun. It's not fun, especially when you're young. It's not a fun rising sign. But I think later on in life, it will pay dividends. But I don't think it's easy. And the other thing with Capricorn rising is you deal with things around bones, right? Bones, backs, like that stuff can be difficult with Capricorn. I got a friend who lives in the West Coast. She's a Capricorn rising. She fucked up her. She doesn't watch my weekday show. But she likes the astrology stuff. She fucked up her wrist about 3 years ago, and Saturn went into her 12th house, and she's still healing that thing. Right. So it's challenges with bones. It's not easy, but if you can master Capricorn rising, it's kind of like Scorpio rising. If you can master it, man, you've done something. You've become responsible, accountable. You've probably learned some level of self-love because there's a pretty good chance that at home, that wasn't always forthcoming. It's not always the case, but by and large, the deal is, you be successful and we'll wrap our arms around you. But it's usually you get to the success part and you get a handshake or something like that. All right, there you go. There's your 12 easiest to hardest signs. What's the feedback? What's going on in there? Cap, rising location, interesting. Felt like I had to prove myself. Yeah, my progressed ascendant is Capricorn rising. I've been dealing with that shit for a while now. Oh my God, you just described my childhood. There you go. You see, Jan, that's why they pay me the big bucks right there. Have Cap right. Let's see what else. Awesome. Let's see. Father times Saturn. Absolutely. You get the bennies of that rising sign. Wow, I'm a Capricorn and you're dead on. Yeah. The rising vein, but can really look good. It can be. Yeah. I know Leo rising. I'll tell you what, Leo rising always has a style. They always have a style. They have a unique and remarkable style about them, which I love. I love. You'll know a Leo rising person because they got a style. They definitely have a style. Let's see. Cap rising, shine serious. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. A broken Leo is truly a bad sight to see. Leo rising, man. Once they figure out that they're not the golden child, man, they have some ego work to do for sure. For sure. Anything else in here? Getting out of Scientology is the mission impossible. That's funny. Those crab claws hold on sometimes and snap, but can be the best as long as good moods. Robin Thomason, I love my sleep. Let's see. Let's see what else. I love Cancer Sunmen. Well, yeah, that's because they're going to be in your 7th house, Jan. Right? That's a good match. That's a good match. By the way, I think. Okay, so here we go. I think Capricorn man, Cancer woman. I think it's a great match astrologically. I really do. The opposite can work too. You know, it can work too, and I think that's a really great match. I think Aries man, a Libra woman. That's a fantastic match. I think Sagittarius and Gemini is kind of kooky. I think that's an interesting opposition. I'm not sure who wins out of that one, but they'll never be bored. Ever, ever, ever be bored. Cancer. I was not made for the robotic new normal life. Oh my God, I'm feeling for you, man. Pop Paradise 69. Man, you hang in there. You hang in there. Yeah, this world is pretty tough right now. Leo rising totally describes the Leo King. Oh my God. Lynn's bringing up the Leo King. Yeah. I think Lynn's bringing up the Leo. I want to have David on my show. I totally want to have him. I'd like to talk with David. I think we'd have a good conversation. Although for that night, I would be the Scorpio King. Because I do have Pluto conjunct my midheaven, and I do have Mars in the 8th house, and I am a Scorpio rising. I have to be on equal level with David. I really do. You know, so he could be the Leo King, and I could be the Scorpio King, and I think we'd have a great dialogue. Actually, there you go. I think I'm Leo rising progress chart. Robert said to keep the hair. Absolutely. Your hair is your brand, Thor. Total brand. Okay. All right. Annie's going to bed. That means I'm going to bed too. It's late. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. And shit, I've been doing this for almost 3 hours now. Where else are you going to get 3 hours of pure cut, unadulterated astrology? Event update. Now, I was checking in on the rooms, and I think we might have to get more rooms. I think that's. I got to check the hotel tomorrow. So I'll have more of an update on the event tomorrow. But I don't know. At the room, I checked in and somebody was not able to get a room. So I gotta find out what that's about. And if that's the case, then that's it's kind of big news, actually. If that's the case, all more in the event tomorrow. I'm out of here. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart, 2 step what's possible. Thanks for being here. Hit the like button. Hit the share button. Okay. You can get a reading from me. I'm still doing those. I may just do a pop. I may do a pop relocation workshop on Sunday. Okay. I may do a pop relocation workshop on Sunday. So if you want to do a relocation workshop on Sunday, I'm just going to say it right now. I'm going to put it right out there right now. I'm going to do one. We'll do a Zoom relocation workshop on Sunday. I'm going to put it in the show page. I will book it on my website. You'll be able to go there. I'll figure out a way to sign up for it. Let's just call it 12 noon this Sunday, relocation workshop. If you are and have subscribed to this, guess what? You get to attend for free, right? Because I know that you want some bennies from subscribing. You're gonna get to attend the relocation workshop for free. That's going to be, and that's happening Sunday. Pop workshop. Okay. And we'll run it for 2 hours. We'll go over a lot of the stuff that I've talked about, right? A lot of the stuff that I talked about tonight around relocation and then some. All right. Robert Phoenix, have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. 15 minutes of flame, short shows this week. I got a shit ton of work to do. Love you all. And we'll be back next week. Ciao for now.